Hi and welcome back to my channel. My name's Joanne. I'm a mum of 3 children and I home educate those 3 children here in the UK. Today, as promised, I'm going to bring you the third part of my series on home education in the UK. The first part referred to deregistering your child from school. The second part of this video series focused on record keeping, and today we're going to talk about taking those records that you've kept and turning them into a report and what should be in a report for your local authority. So here in the UK, the way that local authorities tend to approach home educators and request information regarding their children's elective home education is by requesting an annual report. Now, there are some other ways that you can inform the local authority about your home education provision other than a report. So you might do, for example, a face-to-face meeting with a member of the local authority. That could take place via Zoom in a public place like a library, or it could take place at your own home. I know some people who have done them over Zoom and say that they have got on fine with that. And I think they do, like those that have multiple children, talk about all of their children in one meeting. That's not, however, what we've done. For the past 5 years, I have provided home education reports for my children. So my eldest is just he's just started year 6. And so we've done a report for years 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 so far. And then for my middle son, we've done a report at reception age because he was home educated from the beginning, and years 1, 2, 3, and we haven't done his year 4 report yet. So my local authority request reports from a year from when they last heard from me. So a year since my last report was sort of signed off. So that means that they are not at an exact time of the year. So it's not like every September or every January. It's just a year since we've last had contact. And my 2 eldest children, who are the ones who are compulsory school age at the moment, are actually at slightly different times of the year. So I write 2 separate reports, but I use the same sort of template for both of them, and that is what I will share here. So it is worth mentioning at this point that I am under quite a strict local authority, basically, and so my reports need to be quite detailed. If you are under a local authority that is not quite so strict, this might be overkill. You may not need such a long report, so I hope that you can still use maybe this format. Maybe that'll be helpful, but I would watch the amount of content you put in. If your local authority isn't expecting that, if other home educators in your area don't provide really lengthy reports, then there's no need for you to do that either. So that will free up some of your time to actually home educate your children rather than just report on it. Also, where I live, basically you'll be issued a school attendance order if you don't provide samples with your report. Again, that is not the case in, I think the vast majority of LAs don't require that. What I would do is I would go onto your local Facebook group or make contact with some of your local home educators who've already submitted reports or had dealings with your local authority and see what they say. If they are having success with shorter reports or face-to-face meetings, not sending samples, then I would do that. You don't need to cause yourself any extra work. However, if you are in a stricter LA, just like me, then you might want to consider sending something similar to what I send, or I mean, you can send just a report, no samples, and see what happens, right? Like before you get to a school attendance order, they would tell you that we need some extra information, and then you could maybe presume that by that they mean samples, and then send in samples of work. So So it'd be helpful to start this video, I think, by looking at what the elective home education guidance is for parents. It's very easily accessible on the internet, so I'm not going to read the whole thing. It's not a long document though, but it tells us in here, I'm reading it off my laptop, that Section 7 of the Education Act 1996 says that the parent of every child of compulsory school age shall cause him to receive efficient full-time education suitable to his age, ability and aptitude, and to any special needs he may have, either by regular attendance at school or otherwise. So if you're home educating, you are the otherwise, and your report needs to prove to the local authority that you are educating your child effectively, providing them a full-time education suitable to their age, ability and aptitude, and that you need to be taking into account any special needs that your child may have. I have one of my son's latest home education reports up on my laptop. I can see I've sent it from my email a few months back, and so I'm just going to go through that. So if I'm glancing over here, sorry, I'm just looking at the laptop and what I've got there. So I have started with my son's name, date of birth, current school year group, and then underneath that I've put the date that the report that I'm writing the report on, and my name and who I am in relation to my son, obviously mother. Then I've just popped a paragraph in there about my son, his main interests, an idea of what he might want to be when he grows up. Sometimes I put a favourite book there, or a favourite period of history we've looked at recently, something like that. And then I move on to our educational philosophy. So here I would be just a little bit careful about the wording you use, particularly if you are someone that unschools. I would not use the word unschool in a report that you're sending to a local authority. I think what we have to remember as home educators is that when we've taken our children out of school, we go through a process of deschooling ourselves, and so our mindset around school becomes less traditional, which is fair enough, because we're not just doing school at home, we are home educating our children, and that's a completely different thing. But the people that are reading this are office workers for the council. They are not, in my experience anyway, particularly interested in different educational philosophies other than how that informs the education you're providing your child. And they will be most likely more traditionally minded when it comes to school. So if you use a term like unschooling, which to the masses sounds a little bit like uneducating, or is a term that's subject, right, to controversial headlines and stuff like that, then that may cause alarm. If you unschool, maybe use a different term like self-directed education, something like that. For us, we are more sort of classical Charlotte Mason-y, are very eclectic, but those are like the overarching themes. So I just mentioned a few things from those philosophies that inform my homeschool on a daily basis. And then I move on quite quickly to the actual content of our children's education. So I clearly label now each section with a subject header. So again, as home educators, you don't have to break everything up into subjects, but for the person who's reading the report, it's probably easier if you do label a section either English or literacy, and then another section maths or numeracy. I have a Twinkl account, and so I access the year, whatever my child's in, national curriculum, and just have a quick glance over what children would be learning according to the national curriculum at the age of my current child that I'm reporting on. So I've got year 6 up here from Twinkl. You can access them, I think, through Google as well. Just type in national curriculum, whatever year your child's in, and I can see on the first page it says they would be doing maths, science, English, relationship education, health education, music, geography, computing, design and technology, languages, history, physical education, and art and design. Those would be the main subjects if that a child in a state school in England would be learning. So I think the first time I wrote a report, I took those subject titles and I just put them in as headers, and then I enter underneath each header what have we been doing for those subjects. So English, for example, is an easy one for us because we use a curriculum. If you use curriculums or workbooks, it is going to be a little bit easier than if you are child-led. What I would say is if you go through, just scrolling through here, on the Twinkl one at least, it breaks up English into spoken language, reading, and then it has word reading, reading comprehension, writing, which is transcription, so spelling, handwriting, presentation, writing composition, writing vocabulary, grammar and punctuation. And those are all the sections for English. So you might want to have a quick glance through because there's different parts of English, and even if you're doing a workbook series, like say you picked up a CGP book on grammar, vocabulary and punctuation, you will still need to demonstrate reading comprehension, for example, or reading fluency, handwriting, things like that. And there are multiple ways you can cover that, but just be sure that you've told the council how you are covering those things, even if they're in less traditional ways, right? Like I don't think kids at school, for example, are doing oral narration and copy work, dictation, things like that, but that's what we've done for the majority of the primary school years, and that's fine. Just I had to sort of use those terms and then explain the terms briefly, and then explain what they relate to within English studies. So for example, oral narration is demonstrating comprehension, and it's the beginning of composition, and we sometimes write our narrations down, that we might be doing copy work, and that's showing that's handwriting practice, things like that. That explain it. Don't assume that the person that's reading it knows what you mean by copy work, dictation, narration, because if they haven't done it at school and their own children aren't doing it at school, then they may not know what those terms mean. So for ourselves, when I come to report on English, I grab my son's English folder, and I just look at the beginning of this course, and I imagine it's the same in most curriculums and workbooks. They just list out what the child's going to learn that year. So there's been years when we've been using curriculums like this that I've literally just taken a photo of the contents page, for example, and popped it into the Word document, just like copied and pasted. Other times I've actually typed out, like I say, when we've used more of a Charlotte Mason style, which is what we use in the primary school years, I've had to type out myself like how I feel we're hitting all of these criteria. But yeah, if you can do that, then that helps you to demonstrate that you're effectively home educating your children. This course that we're using this year includes geography and art, and so I would probably very briefly mention that in the when I first mentioned the curriculum, and then I would come back to it a little bit later. Just like I say, have a section. I would maybe even put geography and art together. Because they're not core subjects, our local authority seems to want you to report mainly on numeracy and literacy, and then the other subjects come afterwards, and I do very brief paragraphs on them. It is the numeracy and the literacy that I'm really focusing on when I'm reporting. So I do the same for maths. Again, I'll just go through, see what's taught at the beginning, maybe take a screenshot and pop it in, depending on how much it is to write out by hand. And then, yeah, like I say, science, I will list the science units that we've used. If you're using any outside classes, any tutors, you can feel free to put those in. Music for us would be music appreciation, and there's been times in the past where our children have done some instrument practice or instrument lessons, with a private tutor. Geography for us would be the geography and grammar cards that again come with my eldest son's language arts program. And then there's a little bit of geography work in there, so I would say what we've been doing. Like this year we've been what have we been doing so far? Labelling a map of Australia. What else we got? Computing. Perhaps your children do coding or typing lessons, or both. You could put those down. Design technology. Maybe you go to an outside art class, or maybe your child's just really arty. Maybe that's self-led. We get art instruction through our language arts course, so I would pop that in. Languages, any languages that your children are learning, and the resources you're using. Are you teaching your own children out of a textbook? Are you using an online program like Duolingo? History for us, like I say, we do a lot of reading. I have logs. Actually, that's an important thing that I do, is I go through to my English folder, where is it, and I just look up our literature log, and you could just take a picture and pop it in, or you can just write out what you've been reading. For literature, that would go under English, and then for history, because we do a lot of reading around history, I would put that in. Physical education would be things like, do your children attend any swimming classes or karate classes, anything like that. And I pop in, so I'm just going to switch back now to my my middle son's report. This is. So one of the last paragraphs I pop in is about how I allow my children to make friendships with other children, the groups that we access for that. I don't name groups in particular, but I just sort of give examples of the types of groups we go to. Like I say, where we are, we have quite a big home education community, so it's not really difficult for our children to make friends, but I do just pop that in there. Then I break down what a typical school day looks like for us, and so maybe like the flow of subjects, and I forgot to show this in my last record keeping video, but I print off these sort of checklists from the Good and the Beautiful website. And so I might include a checklist, one that doesn't have scribbles all over it, in with the report. Again, that I can just take a picture of it and paste it in, but just to show what a typical school week would look like. I try to use a school week that doesn't have interruptions. I do explain that we don't have a formal timetable, in that if there's a workshop on one day, we will go to the creative writing workshop or whatever it is, rather than do our normal English. So I explained that there's a little bit of flexibility, but again, you don't want to make it sound like you're always bunking off school. So you do have to be careful to mention that there's some structure. How are you getting through the courses or the workbooks or whatever that you're using, or if you're not using them, what opportunities are you presenting to your children? How do you present those opportunities? Do you leave out, an invitation to learn every day? And what have those invitations been around? Could you put a list of the major themes that you've been putting this workout around? Has your child suddenly gotten into ad-libs and they're learning their grammar through ad-libs or something like that? What do you, if your children play maths games, what are the themes of the games? Do you theme them according to, on a Monday we play this type of game, Tuesday this type of game, or we go through a block where we, for a week we're playing all fractions games until that's mastered and then we move on. The more detailed you can be about that, for my local authority at least, the easier it is for them to get a picture of how you're providing education. And the less they're worrying about there being gaps, I guess. So we do that. Like I say, I might pop in a little checklist. And then I have a list I've kept of field trips for the year. So anytime we go anywhere remotely educational, or my kids do a workshop or anything like that, I just make a list. And again, it's on the Word document. So as soon as one report's gone in, I start up a new report on my Word document. I also double up actually, so I have it on my Notion as well. I have a Notion account just in case something happened to one or the other. And I just keep a running list of field trips we've done. So I can see here I've created a table, and I've just got where we've gone, the date we went on, and any link to learning. So for example, we recently went on a history trip to a museum, and so I would just put the name of the museum, the date we went, and that we were specifically learning about the Victorians at the time, and so anything that relates to that we may have seen that day. And then I also have at the end of my report a resource list. So if you are under an LA that doesn't need any samples, then that will probably be it. So for resources, I put my curriculum. I also put the books that we've read for literature, the poetry books we've used, and then I've also put any games that we've used on this one for English. So things like if your kids do crosswords, or like I say, they were particularly into Mad Libs one year, whatever extra learning you feel they've done, you can put that there. Maybe you use apps, Doodle English, for example, Reading Eggs, that would all count. So just make sure that any resources you've used are under there. And then I do the same so for each subject again, which is easy because I've either got them in the folders here, or I just go back to the paragraphs and just make sure that I've put everything that I've used there, including outside clubs. Again, I don't mention names of where they are or days that they occur on, but I just put, science club under science. So I've just gone through and edited this video, and I've realised that with the sample bit at the end, it's super duper long. So what I would say is, if you are in an LA that's not going to require samples of you, then all you need to do is watch this video, and that should be enough. If you do need extra help with samples, then I will release the sample video separately to this one, and I will do that within the next few days. And feel free to check that out. If you have any questions, then please pop them in the comments, and I'll do my best to respond to you. And if not, I will see you in my next video. Take care and happy homeschooling. Bye.